However, psychological disturbances can become disorders when they're persistent, when they are recurrent, unbearable, limiting your ability to function in your daily life, and won't get better without treatment. That's when these symptoms go from being disturbances or psychological disturbances to disorders. You know by now that it's not easy to be at school, and sometimes it's really tough to avoid feeling stressed out. Pressures can build up. For many of you, this is the first time that you've been away from home and had to make decisions on your own. Now, I know for some of you, this has been an incredibly liberating experience. But for others, this can be worrisome. And I want to tell you that worrying about this is normal. It's absolutely normal to be confronted with new situations and have concerns about them. But feeling very sad, feeling hopeless or worthless may be a sign of a psychological health problem. And you need to know that you don't have to deal with this by yourself. Psychological illness occurs when the brain or a part of the brain isn't working well, or it's working in the wrong way. When the brain isn't working properly, some of the following functions are going to be disrupted. Your ability to think clearly, your behavior will change. The way you perceive what's going on around you may be affected, as well as your ability to perform physical functions. Your emotions may be affected, and those neurotransmitters that send signals throughout your brain may not work properly. And symptoms of these disruptions may include thinking difficulty or focusing attention on problems, experiencing extreme lows or highs emotionally, and sleep problems. When these symptoms begin to significantly disrupt a person's life, we say that that individual can have a psychological disorder or a psychological illness. The DSM, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, officially defines a disorder as a pattern of behavior associated with distress or disability or loss of freedom. 1 out of 4 adults may have at least one psychological disorder, according to statistics gathered by the National Institute of Mental Health. And we're just looking at folks that are 18 years and older. We're not looking at younger teens. 1 out of 17 may have a serious condition, and about half of those with a psychological disorder have more than one condition. That means they may be experiencing depression and anxiety, or have bipolar disorder as well as an eating disorder. What do we know about the causes of psychological illnesses? That the symptoms are a result of abnormal brain function. Psychological illness is a brain disorder. It is rarely, if ever, caused by stress alone. It is not the consequence of poor parenting or bad behavior. It is not the result of an individual weakness or a deficit in personality. It is not the manifestation of an evil spirit. Only in exceptional cases might it be caused by nutritional factors, and it is not caused by poverty. Psychological illness does not discriminate. Many psychological illnesses begin during childhood and can persist into adolescence. These include ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, and general anxiety disorders. But some illnesses begin during adolescence. The ones that occur most often include major depression, schizophrenia, bipolar and panic disorders, social anxiety disorders, eating disorders, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and addictions. What can we tell you about people with psychological illness? That most of them lead productive and positive lives while receiving treatment for their illness. Some people have severe and persistent disorders that respond poorly to treatment. This occurs with psychological illness as well as physical illness. And as I said earlier, psychological illness does not discriminate. Most of us have a friend, an acquaintance, or family member who has or has had some type of disorder. The causes of these illnesses are extremely complicated. They can involve genetics, environment, and together lead to a brain disorder. The presence or absence of symptoms may depend on interactions between three things: genetics, an inherent vulnerability, perhaps you could call pre-existing genetic vulnerability, what are called external stressors, the presence or absence of these factors, things like good or bad relationships, being in a job you like or in a job you hate, and what are called protective factors. Your type of personality may protect you, or you may have the type of personality that makes you vulnerable. The presence of family and friends may protect you. The absence of family and friends may increase your risk. This combination of genetics and environment has been put together in what's called the diathesis stress hypothesis, or what I put here, perhaps it involves nature plus nurture. We're talking about biological factors, a genetic vulnerability, along with certain social or environmental factors, interact to cause depression. And let me include here other forms of mental illness. Okay, so this is the end of part 1. In part 2, we'll discuss the types of psychological disorders, cognitive disorders, anxiety disorders, mood disorders, psychotic disorders. And I also want you to read Successful and Schizophrenic by Ellen Sachs, as well as listen to the podcasts that are on Blackboard.